And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and once again, I'm talking about banning cards in the format, but this time I am actually covering the topic of what cards I would ban if it were up to me. Now, of course, I've covered in the past several times about the cards that are actually banned. You can go check out my opinions on all the cards that are currently banned in the format. I did a video a little over a year ago where I asked my patrons, what are the cards that you would ban, right? Some of the ones that are typically brought up, like Dockside Extortionist, Cyclonic Rift, stuff like that. And I gave my opinions on those cards, right? Some of the most powerful and or annoying cards in the entire format. Spoiler alert, I did not think that any of those cards should get banned. And the reason why is because I err on the side of not banning cards. I just talked about this recently in my hot takes video. Again, I covered the ban topic there, and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this video. A lot of the hot takes I covered there involved banning cards, and obviously it is a very contentious subject in the format. For me, I would err on the side of not banning cards, leave it up to individual groups or rule zero. Again, that's not always a solution to the problem either. There really isn't a solution to the problem other than whatever your personal preferences are. For me, though, the cards I'm going to be talking about today are the cards that I'm just kind of surprised they're not banned. I don't necessarily think they should be. I would be okay if they were. I'm just surprised that they weren't banned immediately when the format was made or very soon after. Just in the entirety of the rules of the format, these are cards that I kind of thought would get banned almost immediately because of what they're doing. And it is going to cover several different topics when we're talking about cards to ban in the format. I am going to start with Sol Ring. And of course, I did talk about this in the hot takes video. And one of the comments I got on that video is, okay, well, we're going to ban Sol Ring, but not Mana Crypt. Obviously, it's the same thing, right? Like I say all the time, this is all the same to me, whether it's a Mox Diamond or a Mox Ruby or a Mana Crypt or a Sol Ring, it's all the same. Fast mana, or more specifically, mana positive. And when you get into that discussion, mana positive, what is that? I didn't make up that term. That's just the term that I heard that I like using. Essentially, it is anything that is cheaper than what it's giving you, or it's giving you more mana than what it costs. So a Sol Ring, of course, the perfect example, only costs 1, gives you 2. The Moxes are typically 0 and give you 1, so they're giving you more mana than what they cost, which of course is busted in most cases. So anything that falls into that category, a Mana Vault, Grim Monolith, any of those rocks you could ban. I totally would be okay with it. I think the format would be perfectly fine, right? All the people out there that maybe don't want these cards to get banned, what's your reason? Other than the fact that banning cards in general you don't like, and I certainly am okay with that opinion as well. I'm okay with these cards existing in the format. I also could very easily make the argument to ban them. I'm just curious for all the people that think absolutely don't ban Sol Ring. Well, what's the reason why? The one argument that I've heard that I think is, again, not a very good one is Sol Ring allows non-green decks to compete with the green decks because, of course, green can ramp really well. And that's a pretty silly argument because, of course, the green decks can play Sol Ring too. So how is that helping you, right? If everyone has a Sol Ring in their deck, it nullifies, right? Everyone cancels each other out. And really, at the end of the day, it just matters who's going to get it out, right? A Sol Ring obviously is super good on turn 1, not so good on turn 8. So really, at the end of the day, all it comes down to, it's just like a coin flip. Are you going to get it early? If you are, it's going to be really, really good. And if you don't, it's not very good at all. It's why I took Sol Ring out on all my decks, because getting out quick, sure, you're going to have a great game. And then if you don't get it out quick, it's not going to help you so much. And also, if you get it out quick, it could also make you a target. I'm not going to get into all of that conversation, as I've covered a lot on my channel before. We could easily ban this. I don't think the format would not change. I promise you, if they ban Sol Ring or all the fast mana rocks, all it would do is just free up space in your deck. You just have more space to put more stuff in your deck, more synergistic cards, more fun, interesting cards. I just really don't like auto includes in all my decks. I don't like that. Another reason why I took Sol Ring out. I don't like that every single deck that I put together, that one slot is already taken for Sol Ring. And of course, Arcane Signet, same thing. A lot of people out there, every single commander deck you ever make, 2 slots are already taken for Sol Ring and Arcane Signet, which means you only have essentially 97, right? Because 2 slots are already taken. I don't love that. That has nothing to do with the banning, though. I'm talking about banning here, so I'm not going to get too much off the topic. I'm surprised they didn't get banned in the beginning. As I've said since the very start. The Moxes, being banned immediately, that doesn't surprise me. I'm surprised they didn't ban Soul Ring as well, and Mana Crypt. And again, it's all the same. In my opinion, they're super busted and they're essentially all the same. Probably the card that for me was the biggest surprise when I first started playing this game that it wasn't banned was Serra Ascendant. And again, this is one of those cards, and I'm going to talk about a few cards that I'm like, I can't believe people have never called for this card to get banned. When this format was first created, you'd think that Serra Ascendant would be banned and nobody would question it. 1 mana, 1/1 with lifelink. Okay, nothing wrong with that, except as long as you have 30 or more life, it's got +5/+5 and has flying. So if you have 30 or more life, it's a 6/6 flyer with lifelink. And of course, in the Commander format, that's not hard to do. You start with more than 30 life. And I'm sure almost everyone out there playing this format has seen the first turn Serra Ascendant. Everyone is so upset when they see a first turn Soul Ring. First turn Serra Ascendant is way better. 1 mana, first turn, 6/6 flying lifelink. That's insane, right? This is a card that when I first started playing, I couldn't figure out why it wasn't banned. When they first decided, okay, what cards are we going to ban in this format? Why wasn't this one of them? Why did no one think, hey, a first turn 6/6 flying lifelink creature is ridiculous? Now, it's not going to end games. I have seen this turn 1 in a lot of games I've played. I've seen it happen many, many times. Usually what happens is, it unbalances the game. Just like with the mana positive mana rocks, it really unbalances the game. If some guy, especially if you're in like a theme where it fits, like a life gain theme, if you're in a life gain deck, and I don't have this in my mono white life gain Patron of the Kitsune deck because I just think it's too much. But if you're in one of those decks, man, it's really easy for the game to get completely out of control for you. First turn I play it, no one removes it right out of the way. I get in for 6 damage and gain 6 life. That's a 12-point life swing on turn 2. That's huge, right? First turn, 6/6 flying lifelink creature is absurd, obviously, in any format. Even in the Commander format, that's absurd. So I'm just surprised it wasn't banned immediately. Do I think it should be banned? I'm okay with it. Whenever you see it in first turn in a Commander game, it's like, boy, that's really crazy. Again, for me, I'm just thinking, why isn't it banned? When you see it, you're just like, how come this card wasn't banned? First turn 6/6 flyer is ridiculous. How come it wasn't banned immediately? I don't know. Similarly, and maybe to a lesser extent, is Fenix Are Sovereign. Now, again, I don't think this card should get banned. It's 6 mana. I don't see people win games with this very often anymore. This is a card that used to get played in the format a lot back in the day. Of course, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 40 more life, you win the game. So again, in the Commander format, you got 40 life. Right out of the gate, you got 40 life. Now, of course, 6 mana means you're not going to play this until quite a bit later on when you likely don't have 40 life. But again, in that life gain deck, it's very easy to do so. It's just a very easy win con in the Commander format. Now, this one is way much more less the case. I don't know, like Serra Ascendant, you can get out turn 1, but Fenix Are Sovereign just straight up wins you the game. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that have won games with this card. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having those alt win cons in the Commander format. Again, though, for me, I'm just thinking any card, just like with Serra Ascendant, that references having 30 or more life or 40 or more life, it's like, okay, well, you already have that immediately right out of the gate. I don't think this card should be banned. It's certainly not busted in the Commander format. It doesn't even get played that much in the Commander format anymore. Just surprised it didn't get banned right out of the gate. For sure, the card that I am both surprised it wasn't banned immediately when the format was created, and also, still, every year that goes by, I'm surprised it doesn't get banned, is Kikijiki Mirror Breaker, and I'm surprised I never hear for people calling this card to get banned, and again, I don't necessarily want this card to get banned, I'm just really surprised it isn't. If you look at the cards on the banned list, and if you go watch that video, I talk about it, all these specific cards, right? I'll put a bunch of them up. Cards that are banned mostly because they combo with whatever, right? There's a lot of cards that are banned in the format that on their own, they're not really particularly that fantastic, but if you combo with this card, or if you match them up, or if you put them in that specific scenario, they're busted, right? Kikijiki Mirror Breaker is that on steroids, right? Kikijiki Mirror Breaker combos with a ham sandwich. There are, I don't know, it's got to be at least 20, 30 cards that just go infinite with Kikijiki. It is maybe one of the most combo crazy cards in the entire game of Magic. It just goes infinite with so many different things. For me, I'm just thinking all the arguments you have for we need to ban this card because of what it does with this other card. Why doesn't that apply to Kikijiki? This is one of the main win cons, I would say, even in CEDH, right? In competitive EDH, Kikijiki is a very often seen win con in that format. It's used in Modern as a win con. It gets used in all sorts of formats as a win con because it so easily combos with so many different things. So again, it's just a surprise. And for all the people out there that are saying, oh, well, this card needs to get banned because it combos with X, Kikijiki. Why are you not calling for Kikijiki to get banned? That's all I'm saying. I just don't get it. Similarly, but in a different aspect, is Blightsteel Colossus. And this is a card that covers the other scenario, right? And again, if you look at the banned cards on the list, like Biorhythm is one that I bring up a lot, or whatever card, it's really expensive and pretty much just ends the game. Any of those arguments, again, for me, apply to Blightsteel Colossus as well. And this is another card that when they made this format or when they were deciding what to get banned, and again, I'm not sure if Blightsteel Colossus existed when the format was first made or when they decided or if it came after or whatever. But nevertheless, this is a card that I'm thinking, okay, well, this is in most cases just I kill a player or likely I'm going to win the game pretty quickly with it because, of course, it's doing infect damage where infect damage will kill you. So in most situations, and yes, I know there are answers, but of course, there's answers for Biorhythm. You could just counter it. You could just, there's always that situation, right? So again, if we're going to say, oh, well, you can just remove it, you can just path it, you can just whatever. Okay, that applies to everything. Why ban Sarah Ascendant? Why ban Kikijiki? Why ban anything? Prophet of Krufix. Why ban that if you could just remove it? That's the argument for everything, right? Everything is I can just remove it or I can just counter it. So those arguments don't apply. So for all the people that say, oh, well, Blightsteel Colossus is not a big deal. Swords is one of the most popular. In fact, it's probably the most popular removal spell in the entire format. Sure, but that applies to any creature that you have banned, right? For me, that's not an argument. The argument that you would make for we need to ban this really expensive card, right? This is filling that category. The category of we have a really expensive card that is more or less, not really, but more or less going to end the game, for which there are a lot of cards like that that are currently banned in the format. Blightsteel Colossus for me falls into that category. Really expensive card. I'm going to kill one opponent likely. So again, I don't think it should be banned. I definitely would not be sad if it was, but for me, it's one of those cards that I'm just like, this seems like one of those cards that right out of the gate, you'd think they would have banned it, and they didn't. And that's kind of surprising for me. It falls into that category, right? Kikijiki falls into the category of it combos with X. Blightsteel Colossus falls into the category of really expensive card that just ends the game or at least makes one person lose the game. The last card I'm going to talk about today is a really interesting one. It's pretty niche, but it's a card that I really, really disliked when I first started playing the Commander format. It's one that I don't think anyone has ever called for getting banned, but it is one that for me, if I could ban one card in the format, this would probably be it, Winds of Change. And a lot of people will probably be scratching their head over this, but I will explain exactly why I really dislike this card specifically in the Commander format. 1 red mana sorcery. Each player shuffles the cards from their hand into their library, then draws that many cards. So it's a wheel effect, a 1 mana wheel effect. In fact, it is probably the most efficient way ever to get everyone to do draw triggers, right? If that's what you want. And that's the decks where this card gets played. Whether or not you want draw triggers, your opponents, whoever wants the draw triggers. This is currently in 18,000 decks on EDH Rec. It doesn't get played a ton. Obviously, it works in the Nekusar decks because you're making your opponents draw a bunch. The Xyrus decks as well. You can also put it in those Locust God decks because, of course, you're getting the draw triggers. Any deck like that, it works. Now, why I specifically want this card banned and not any other, right? So I'm not talking about wheels. Any other wheel, fine, no problem. Why specifically this one? And specifically this one, because you can cast it on turn 1. And this has happened to me a few times. And it's absolutely brutal in a Commander game, in my opinion. Everyone shuffles up, everyone draws 7 cards, everyone looks at their opening hand and goes, yep, I got 3 lands or whatever, whatever it is you want. Maybe I got, the mana rock, the ramp, whatever it is I'm looking for, a couple of my pieces that I need to make my game work. I'm good to go. Everyone says they're keeping their hand. Let's start playing the game. Play my first turn land, and I don't really have anything, so I'm passing turn. The very next guy plays a mountain and plays Winds of Change. right out of the gate, first turn, Winds of Change. Now, why would he do that? There's no reason. There's no reason to ever do that except just to be a troll. That's essentially the only reason to ever do that. But you very much can do that, right? I shuffle away my hand, and of course, everyone has to shuffle away their hand. I suppose the guy who cast it, maybe he's got a really bad opening hand. He didn't want to mulligan. He saw the Winds of Change. So he thought, instead, I'll just cast Winds of Change. And it's not a bad strategy, right? It's not a bad strategy to, instead of mulligan down to 6, I shuffle my hand away and draw a new one. And I'll screw over my 3 opponents by making them draw fresh hands, even though they thought they had a good opening hand. So now, and this has happened to me many times in Commander, I shuffle away my hand, I draw 7 new cards after I've done absolutely nothing, and maybe I didn't even play my first turn land. Maybe I'm one of the people that hasn't even played yet. I haven't even had an opportunity to play my first turn land. I draw 7 cards and I got no lands in hand. So now I've shuffled away my decent opening hand and drew 7 cards and no lands, or maybe 1 land. So this card allows someone to just force everyone on turn 1 to shuffle away their decent or maybe good opening hand, and now they have a really bad one, and it just really makes the game yuck, right? I mean, it can be a big advantage for you. It can be a big advantage for that one guy who wants everyone to shuffle their hand away so that it is screwing over your opponents. Sure, okay. It's not fun, right? It's not great, right? It would be no different than playing a first turn Tabernacle, which again, I guess I could have added that card to this list because that sure is a super unfun card. But I'm not putting cards on this list just for being unfun. I'm putting cards on this list because it just seems like, because of what the capabilities are for this card, it is a card that could very easily be banned in the format because it ruins the initial contract, can you maybe call it, for what the game is, which is everyone draws their opening hand, decides they're going to keep it, right? They're deciding not to mulligan. They're looking at the cards they have and they're deciding to keep it. And you're saying, to heck with that, I'm not going to let you. That's what that card enables, which is what I really, really don't like. I really don't like this card in the Commander format. And if I could pick one card to ban, this would be it, just for that one scenario. And yes, I know that one scenario is niche, but again, a lot of the cards that are already banned, right? I'm comparing to the cards that are already banned. There's a whole bunch of cards that are already banned in the format for that one specific niche scenario, and that's why I would ban this. I would ban Winds of Change just because that first turn play where everyone has to shuffle away their hand that they kept sort of just ruins the whole game from that point on, right? So if I had to pick one card, that would probably be it. Again, I'm not necessarily saying these cards that I talked about here should be banned, but I have been asked many times, what cards would I actually ban? And these are some ones that I think I probably would not be surprised if they were banned. Again, I'm using the logic that is used for the cards that are already banned. I'm taking the logic that is used there and then applying it to the cards that I've talked about here today. You guys let me know what you think. Cards that you would ban. Let me know what you think of my potential bannings here, whether or not you think it's a good idea. I imagine a lot of people probably don't want Sol Ring banned. Of course not, because everyone's got it in their decks. But again, I would say that you would find that you wouldn't miss it that much, honestly, if it was, and it would free up space in your deck. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.